Yes.
I wanted to read it.
I want to read it. I looked everywhere in the store, but they didn't have it anymore.
Yeah, well, it just came out like literally 2 weeks ago, so you could probably order it faster. Then it'll be.
We'll try to order like several sets of it.
Yeah.
We have a book room with like sets of books, and they get to check it out and have book clubs with them and stuff. So we'll try to.
I said we're all like waiting for him to close the door. Okay. So that was not the original ending. That was the original ending. Tommy died and the father lived, and the last scene was in a hospital room. Or no, I guess you saw him in the hospital room, and then the last scene, she and her dad were fly fishing and kind of talking about everything that had happened. The editor that worked on the book felt like it was too predictable and felt like it had lost its tension and really wanted the book to be, I guess, more poignant and not just like a fast-paced thriller, like really wanted like an emotional connection to the reader. So she said, why don't you try to kill the dad? And I said, I can't do that. And which I don't even know why, because for some, I guess just because you know Tommy more, right? So you're pretty attached, or I don't know if you are, but I mean, I was pretty attached to Tommy. But it was easy to kill him. And, and originally I killed off Tommy because I felt like it was in alignment with the Tasali history that he kind of went through about Tasali, who sacrificed for his people on the Trail of Tears, that he, turned himself in and kind of, was executed in order to save his people. So originally that was my original tie-in, was that Tommy was kind of passive, not really there, withholding information or not being totally upfront, not lying, but not being totally upfront, and that he was going to kind of step up and, take that bullet, just like Tasali did for his people on the Trail of Tears. But she said, why don't you write it, and then we'll see what you think. Like, just write it. And I cried the whole time I wrote it. It was like this sad. I was like, oh, God, this is so sad. Like,
they really didn't get to have too much of, like, a moment together. She's thought about her dad every waking moment and sacrificed, and then all of a sudden when the reunion was so bittersweet, they didn't get to.
I know, they just had that one moment in the cave. But it became a poignant moment, and I think it's actually, I get some hate mail. I'll say that. I mean, I get some emails like, how could you do this? Tommy deserves to die, blah, blah. I'm like, these are not real people. But I think that it's really poignant in the fact that she sacrificed herself looking for him, like saved him, she had a goal and she met it. And then he in return kind of, sacrificed his life for her, which is what she has been doing for months. So that kind of ended up being the turnaround. But it definitely is not my favorite ending. I've thought about can we put one out with an alternate ending? But I don't know how you would market that, or, maybe I'll put the alternate ending on my website or something so people can go back and be like, no, rewind, and then, yay. But it definitely is not the ending I would have chosen. But when I talk about some of my writing, I think sometimes in writing you have to do that. You have to choose what is not expected, and choose what is, I guess, more realistic.
Well, it's kind of like
and not wrap it all
like
up.
Gone with the Wind. Like, do y'all even know Gone with the Wind? Yeah. And how like he rejects her at the end. When I first saw that, I was upset for 3 or 4 weeks, but that's what made it so good, because it didn't have the whole imperfect happy ending, which I think at that time.
And I think when you find him, you think that you're like, oh, thank God, and that was when she said it lost its tension. So you sit back and go, she found him, but there's still like 30 pages left, and then you're like, what? I mean, it's funny when I watch Goodreads, I can see people reading it, and then you can kind of see where they are in the Kindle, and I'm just like, oh God, they're about to get to the part, and then they'll just be like, no, and like that's their only post from Goodreads. Is just like the N and like capital O's with like exclamation points, and I'm like, oh, they just got to that part, like, what? Did you really do that? So.
What did you guys think about the part where she found all those like plans or whatever, and then she says, was Mo alive under that sheet? If so, why would Agent Sweeney sneak him out of the woods? What were you thinking about that at the end? Like,
were you surprised, or were you?
I wasn't surprised.
You weren't? Okay.
Like, I didn't expect you to, like, so quickly kill Mo, because he seems, like, too good to, like, let go so fast.
what did y'all like
So
about
you
Mo?
want-
Give
yeah.
some examples, some
Is
evidence.
this because he has an English
Really
accent,
hot.
isn't
He's
it?
British.
And that, you know what, that totally works too, because that's what happens. Everywhere he goes, he's like, I'll handle it. And then he like goes up and asks like the nice lady at the front counter who just told me no, you know, excuse me, and she's like, of course. And I mean, so he totally, you know, I mean, it's just that accent thing.
What else? What were some examples that y'all liked? Come on, I
What'd
liked
you-
how he kept saving
yeah, okay,
her. Like he was always in the woods at the right time, and like, what else did
It's
y'all
funny,
like?
like the teachers are talking about.
He's good with like rocks and stuff.
Right? That's like Grace's, you know, Grace is like, oh yeah, rocks. Ooh, that's
Like he can identify types of rocks and
He's
Grace,
smart.
Yeah, Grace.
I think smart can be attractive.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think that's part of why I like my husband, is because he is, you know, he has something that he knows. That's probably what she likes.
My husband has a PhD in topography, and so that's the study of terrain. And in that, he studies geology. So when we go, it's actually, like I put stuff in there that everyone thinks is sexy, but it's stuff I kid him about. So like every time we go on a hike, I don't know why I do this all the time, because I really don't walk like that. But it's just like, when we go on hikes, he's always picking up rocks, going, oh, this is graphite, oh, and like talking about the rock. And then, you know, now my kids are like running around going, look, it's a crystal, and they're like at home, you know, rubbing rocks. And so, and I was like, okay. And they're like, they come back with like all these rocks in their pockets, and they really just look like rocks. But he's like, you know, I've never seen quartz in this color and shape. Oh.
So you like that he had that knowledge. What else did y'all like about him? Y'all said he was your favorite.
He was caring.
He was caring.
What
He
was
was
some examples
like
of that?
mysterious, like he couldn't really tell what he was thinking of, because he was just a mysterious person.
Yeah,
And I think
mysterious, yeah.
his thoughts were like masked. Like Grace can only see that through like sometimes she can only catch glimpses of like his reaction of what she was saying.
What'd you guys think of Win?
I like him better than Mo.
Interesting. You are Team Win. Or not many people on Team Win. Team Win is a small team. I like Win too. I totally like, I mean, that I had a best friend like that in high school that was just kind of like that awkward, you know, we kind of dated once and then now it's all awkward, but we try to pretend like it's not awkward, but it really is awkward kind of moment, you know? You know what I'm saying? Or like the moment where you have like this really best friend and then you realize he's kind of cute and then it's all awkward because you think he knows you think he's cute, but he doesn't know, but then you're awkward. You know what I'm saying? So
What made you like Win better?
I mean, like, I think he's more of like kind of person that you actually want to tell secret with.
right.
Like, he's more of like best friend type, not boyfriend type.
Yeah. Oh, but he's so cute. What was really important to me in writing the two boy characters was to have, and even though Mo is mysterious and does have some secrets, I think they're for some good reasons, was to have good guys, you know, like there are so many books who it's like the girl likes the bad guy, or, you know, like we'll use Twilight as an example because that's a big one, you know, like, I mean, Edward's kind of creepy, like if someone's watching me while I sleep and is in my window, like that's kind of, right? That's kind of creepy, like that stalker guy. Just because he can, you know, just because he glitters doesn't mean that he needs to stand in my window. And like, you know, it was like kind of an obsessive relationship. So it was really important to me to have two guys that were like good, solid guys that, you know, didn't treat anybody like crap, you know, that were respectful, that appreciated her for, you know, different sides, but appreciate her for who she was. Because she's a little difficult and extremely annoyingly impulsive. And, you know, I like that Win knows that about her and just takes it with a grain of salt, and that, you know, Mo thinks that's a strength, that she's tough, that they both see her strengths as something different. And that they bring those two different sides out in her, you know. Mo kind of brings out that girly side in her, which I think she's not really used to because she's just trucking around, you know, in the woods. And then Win brings out that kind of funny, light side of her that I think she needs because she's so intense. So that was kind of why I tried to show those two different sides through those characters. And I think when you're writing, that's what you want to do. Like, you want to show your character, like, through their interactions with other people. So when people say show, don't tell, you know, if you're writing, it's showing the reaction to someone else and learning about that character, as opposed to saying she's intense with Mo and she's not with Win. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess I think that she and Mo obviously had more in common because of the tragedy that they had both been through. And I just don't think Win was that, he hadn't experienced anything in his life that could make him that deep and that intense.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he could ever truly, like, click with her like Mo could, because he understood what she was going through.
Right. And what do you think about Win's reaction at the end?
Kind of made me mad.
I know, right? But Win, you know, comes from, I mean, his father left him, you know, when he was 5. I don't know if you got there. There's like little pieces of those stories in there about him. And, you know, Carl was really his, like, stand-in guy. I mean, that was really who he looked up to. It was like his surrogate father. And then, of course, Skylar. Like, you know.
Oh, that's Skylar.
And, you know, so, I mean, I think a teen boy, you know, when they hit something like that, I don't think they're going to grasp the severity. I don't think he understands the severity. It's kind of like when you hear a story about someone losing their parents, like you're like, oh, that's sad. But I don't think you really feel it unless something has happened with your family that's just as tragic.
What about the, I wanted to talk about the tension that, like, after the dad had died or went missing, that she and her mom went through. I thought that was a big...
Yeah, what do you think about the mom and the girl and the daughter, I mean, Grace's relationship? Was it was her mom justified? Was her mom out of line?
I think her mom was out of line, like the way she was acting towards her, because she's an adult, and I know she's going through, like, pain, but, like, think of her daughter who still believes her dad is alive. Like, think beyond yourself and think the best for your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't like her attitude.
And do you feel like she redeemed herself at the end, or were you still kind of like,
A little.
yeah, just a little bit? Yeah, because I think Grace needs her.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a mom, so, like, I totally see the mom side. Like, if I lost my husband right now with my kid, I don't think I would, it's not that I wouldn't want to be there for my kids. I just think a piece of me would check out. And I don't know if I would see, like, we're looking at the relationship, you know, from the inside out. But I think when you lose someone, and I don't know if any of you have a grandparent, just a friend, anyone, like, a piece of you breaks and checks out. And I don't think you understand, you know, I've lost a close friend of mine. I don't think you understand that break until it happens. And I think that's where she is. I think she's in that space where she's just trying to survive. She can't pay the bills. She's working, you know, a double shift at the diner. She's never worked a day in her life. You know, she was always taken care of, and, you know, Grace really connected with her dad much more than her mother, and now there's kind of this awkwardness, empty space that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you know. But, yeah, I mean, I wish she would have stepped up a little bit sooner.
Also, like, her mother, like, she could have paid attention more, because I sort of feel like she did heal a little bit, but, like, her mother kept on neglecting her,
Mm-hmm.
because she would put, like, for breakfast milk, and, like, Grace is, like, lactose intolerant. And, like, she would always forget that, but I guess it's, like, sort of, like, you know, like, that side and that side.
Yeah.
It's sort
She's
of
just checked
connected.
out. She's just like, I just need to feed my kid, and I just need to go get money and put food on the table and keep the house. You know, and the town is suffering from the economic downslide anyway. So everyone's kind of feeling that, you know, and I tried to pull that in just because there are so many towns that I drive through that, you know, stores are closed, and I always think to myself, gosh, you know, what is going on with this small town? Like, are they going to make it? Like, is this town even going to be a town anymore? Because if, you know, the general store closes, and now, like, who's going to go in there for the souvenir shop? Like, you know, I mean, so some of those things, and maybe some of that's being an adult, like, I pay more attention to, like, gosh, I just went through a mountain town, and, like, half of the shops are all closed. And I know that's just economic downturn, so I think that's.
What did y'all think about? Were y'all able to kind of maybe figure out who was going to be bad and who was going to be good? Because there was that, I think, tension all the way through. Okay, is it going to be him or is it going to be him?
Right.
Somebody in here is crooked, but we didn't really know
Right.
who.
Were you surprised at the twists?
About Carl,
Yes.
the officer.
I know that was a bummer, right? Because you thought it was less.
I thought he was from the save them, like when he arrived.
Right.
And then
You're like, oh.
But it's him.
It was kind of expected though too. It was kind of expected because
You knew there had to be a twist.
yeah, because it gave you hints throughout the book.
Yeah.
Like the bear pits and like
how
What
he
was
always
his name?
told Grace to stay out of it.
yeah, like
Uh-huh.
how he kicked out Grace out of the bear pits since Grace like went in there.
The chief.
Her dad.
The chief,
But
yeah.
I thought it was gonna be the other one, the one that had the dog.
Les.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be him.
Yeah, I know, and he ended up saving her.
Yeah, he ended up being
I like that whole boot print thing that you did. I thought that was kind of neat.
We see that some, like, when we go hiking, my husband's like, someone's out here in the woods because I have a boot print. I'm just like, it doesn't look, how do you know it's a boot print? But the whole tracking thing is very interesting to me that, they're like, basically everyone in this world leaves some type of fingerprint somewhere. And that you can be easily tracked, not only internet-wise, but, physically, but especially internet. Like, now there's internet, fingerprints that you leave everywhere. So people can pretty much follow your trail. So the idea that you couldn't find someone. And that kind of comes, I talked a little bit about this in the session, like it all comes from passion. So I don't know what it's like to have someone missing, but I've lost my daughter in Target before, and it is not fun. And it's that moment that doesn't seem like it's as big, but if you're a mom and like you turn around and your 5-year-old or your 2-year-old is not there and you're like, my daughter's name is Madeline, so I'm like, Madeline, and then they don't answer, and then you're like, Madeline, and then you're like, Madeline, and you're like, start running through Target, and they're like, look at me down the aisles, you're like, oh my god, like, should I go look for her, or should I go tell security? And then she's like, yeah, I'm over here by the, thingamadoogies, like, the Polly Pockets. I'm just like, don't do that, but that feeling of, like, panic in that one moment, I don't know, maybe you've had that with an animal, or a dog, or a cat, like, if you lose your animal, it's awful. So imagine that, like, day after day after day, and then never getting a sign, and never, like, I think that would just be the worst as a parent, even as a child, of just not knowing.
I think that's part of why the mom had to shut it in her mind.
That was the only way she could function.
She had to go ahead and say that he was dead so that she could go to work and so that she could keep functioning. Otherwise, just that feeling of, are they okay or where are they at? Just that constant wondering. And it was, I think, making Grace a little crazy too.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Grace is intense. She's a little crazy. She's, completely obsessed. And I was sad about Carl. It's funny because I'm talking about I made him, I agreed. But I really feel like they're real people. So I was disappointed. Because that actually is not how it originally it was less. Originally it was less, and I just felt like everyone was going to know it was less. And so I think it went through some beta reader, I call them beta readers, but my critique partners. So Jennifer is one of my critique partners. So I have about 3 or 4 authors that I work with, and we switch off work and read it. And, I always say, email me or text me and tell me what you're thinking as you read it. And one of my critique partners, and I think it was Kimberly Durding, who wrote the Body Finder series, she texted me and said, it's less, isn't it? And I'm like, how far are you in the book? And she said, like, halfway. And I was like, I don't want...
I didn't hear you.
Nice role model.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We missed
Now
it.
I'm totally going to be, like, banned from the library.
Not in this room.
I was just so frustrated, because I wanted it to be a twist. I wanted it to be a thriller. So if you think it's less the whole time at the end, you're like, I knew it, So I went back and tried to restage it and was bummed because in the very beginning, Carl was like, look at yourself. If you spend every day walking 10 miles, like you're going to be 65 by the time you cover this entire mountain. Like come back to earth. And so I felt like he was so supportive. And so, even though he was, he was kind of like stern, like, no, I'm a policeman. I know what this is. Move on, As teens, sometimes I was so melodramatic that I couldn't move on. And so I felt like he was that voice of reason. So I thought it was a bummer when he walked in at the end.
I liked how you use imagery throughout the book. Like you give that sort of feeling like you're in there with Grace.
I've heard that a lot, yeah. And I think that's because I've been there so much. And then, so when I'm writing, I try to write from 5 senses. So when I would go to the mountains, you know, and my husband was, you know, he's fishing, and my kids are all running around, and I'm reading, like, how geeky is that, like 5 miles in, and I have my notebook, and so I'm like taking notes, you know, what does it sound like, sound, and then I'm just like, what does it sound like, you know, and what do I hear, and I hear the water, and I hear the birds, but once you get past the water and the birds, like there's other little things like rustling, and I'm like, ooh, what's that? There's like some kind of big bug right next to me, you know, like little things like that, but I'm so paranoid about the woods that I'm like constantly looking around, what's that noise, what's that noise, what's that noise? So I think those noises for her would just be like second nature. And then it's kind of like, what does it smell like? You know, so you kind of, I mean, I didn't use taste, obviously, because I'm going to taste them. But, you know, like, I guess if you look at those 5 senses, I think that helps you describe. Because I think sometimes we just think of visual, and so we end up going into a narrative about, oh, she's got jeans on with some gray and pink checkered shirt and some gray sleeves, and, you know, like, we start just regurgitating everything that we see, but I think sometimes we miss those other senses when we're walking around. And I think if you want to write, those are really important, to take a notebook and pay attention to those things, because those things will, like, totally flood your book.
I feel like your descriptions did not slow down the action, which sometimes, I don't know if you guys have read a book where it's like, okay, come on already, I don't want to hear, I don't want to know in that much detail. So your descriptions, it was enough that you were in the setting, but it didn't hinder, I think, the story.
So a way to change pace when you're writing is, you know, either in your sentence structure, and I'm talking about writing thrillers in the next session, but either your sentence structure, and then, but when you have a thriller, like, you have to have breaks. You have to write breaks in there, because if someone's just like, I mean, they're going to have a heart attack by the end of the book, or it's just going to be so overwhelming, they're going to be like, oh my God, this is so annoying. Like, how long is she going to run? You know, like, nobody can run that far. So you build in those breaks, and so the narrative goes in the breaks, but I really wanted to make sure that I saw everything through Grace's eyes. So if I'm running, oh my God, someone's after me, oh my gosh, look at that cute little squirrel. Like, that is not, you know, or, oh my gosh, oh, nice oak. Oh, I wonder who's, oh, it must be, you know, fall, or why isn't it blooming? I don't know, like, here I am running again.
I was going to say the same thing. Look at you running again.
You know, I'm training for a 5K, so maybe that's it.
And we want pictures of you running your 5K, because I want to see
And I don't even run like that.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to be really paranoid. When I'm running, I'm going to be like, I do run like that.
I do.
I just run, maybe I run slower. But if I ran fast, that's hard. So, I mean, I think I try to see it through her eyes. So when she's running, she is not going to be looking at the scenery. She's going to be, oh my gosh, I just tripped over a stick. Oh my gosh, I'm about to fall. I'm going to fall. Are they still behind me? Looking back over your shoulder, you know, scratching in the face. Like, you're just going to be trying to get out of there. But when you're sitting there fly fishing and thinking about your dad, you're going to remember all those moments. So, but it is a way to slow down the story, to kind of get ready to, it's like that dip, you know, because then you got to rise back up again. So just as you're about to put it down, I got to go back up again. So you don't put it down. And that was my goal, was I love that feeling of sitting in my bed, reading a book, and go, okay, I'm just going to read one more chapter. And it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. My husband's snoring next to me, which, trust me, Mo probably snores. And, you know, it's late. I got to get up at 6 with my kids. Just one more chapter. And I just read a chapter. I'm like, okay, just one more chapter. Seriously, like one more chapter. That's it. And I love that feeling of not being able to put a book down. And so that's what I really wanted to do. And so after I wrote the book, I went back and recut it. And so I recut it on an inverted conflict curve, which doesn't really, it kind of sounds dorky, but so usually you have rising action and then the conflict and then the resolution, and a lot of people do that within a chapter. And so the chapter break ends on the resolution. So I went back through and recut my book and cut my book on the conflicts, like right at the conflict before the resolution, so that you were like, I just have to see what the resolution is. And so that was just a matter of recutting it, which is just a structural thing that you can do when you're writing thrillers. And James Patterson does that. He writes on the and I have read a lot of James Patterson. So his books are page turners because he cuts on the inverted conflict curve.
What about, I know you said you kind of do an outline of, was it hard to write the first chapter and get it started? Like how, like if you were giving them advice on how to start something. Because I love your first line. I know the exact moment I went wrong. And the whole, like you.
And that's a characteristic of me. Like I am very focused on time. So I'm like, oh my God, that took me 72 minutes. My husband's like, first of all, that is like a minute and 12 seconds. You know, like, I mean, 72 seconds. Like, who says that? You know, so I'm always very specific, so that was something for her. So I think you immediately get the idea that she's slightly obsessive, you know? So I think in the first chapter, what I wanted to get across was what kind of book is this going to be? So if I started with the scene where she's tracking, like it's kind of a slow book, it's a wilderness book, oh, and it's a conservation book, and now, you know, it's a science project, and she's, you know, it didn't, so I needed to start the book off so that you knew it was going to be a thriller. And then, of course, there is some setup. Like, I would have loved, I think the second book gets into action a little bit more, but because Grace's dad's missing, and I wanted to drop you right in that moment, I kind of had to show some setup so that the beginning doesn't kick off as fast as I would like it to. And I cut a lot of stuff out of the beginning because the editor was just like, it's too slow, you need to speed it up if it's a thriller. So that was why I did that first chapter, was, you know, I'm going to drop them in the middle of the book, and then whoops, rewind, and then like take them to the beginning so that in those moments, they were like, what happened? Why is she running? Who's she running from? And I totally stole that from Twilight. I'll say that right now. Because Twilight opens up, and there's the one page of her saying, the hunter, you know, advanced towards me. And, you know, I didn't know if I was going to die or not. And then there's, so she has that cliffhanger, and it literally is like a half a page. And, you know, he walked towards me hunting me. And that was like where it ended. I'm like, what? And then like the next 100 pages of Twilight, I was like, okay, can we just get to like the vampire already? You know, because then it's like the school and the setup, and then she moves to her dad's, and she's in the car with her mom, and then she goes to the airport, and it's just like all this setup. But the only thing that pulled me through that was the fact that I knew someone was hunting her. And I needed to get to the point, like, who is hunting her? And once I got to that, I read the rest of the book. But so that was totally just a technique. But when I'm writing, I really can see the whole story in my mind playing out. I have a very visual mind, and I think it's just from watching so many movies. And I watch more movies than I read because I do have a short attention span. So I think that's just what keeps me going is seeing that visually. So I could totally see her running. I could totally see her tracking. But this story, so I'll tell you this. So this story did not, this is kind of embarrassing. But when I first started this story, it was about a jihad terrorist group that was training soldiers in the woods. Right?
Wow.
So, right, I know it's kind of embarrassing. I know. So I sent that off to agents and editors thinking, totally, because this is after 9/11, they're totally going to take a jihad story. And one agent came back and said, you had me until page 112. And that was when you revealed that it was the jihad terrorists. And then I was just like, what the heck kind of book is this? This is stupid. Like... And so she said, if you'd be willing to rewrite the book, which was my whole book at that point, I'd be willing to take a look at it again. You get so much rejection in this industry that if you get a nice rejection that's personal, like it's funny, all writers sit around, they're like, I got a personal rejection today. We're like, ooh, that's awesome. And I mean, it's like, because if you just get the form letter, it's like, they couldn't even bother to like write a handwritten note. Like it's just like, send them a form letter. Like that's how bad the book is, like is what it feels like. So if you get a personal rejection with a note and then an invitation to resubmit, because with agents and editors, if you resubmit once, you're not allowed to resubmit again because they don't want to see it again. They've already rejected it. So if they ask you to resubmit, like you're kind of over the hump. You're like, okay, she connected with the character, she connected with the setting. I just need to go back and replot the whole book. No problem. No big deal. So I came back through and said, okay, who would be in the woods? And this was right before I went to the bear pits and like kind of got into that bear story. So I was trying to rewrite this story, and we were going on vacation in the mountains, and that's when I came across those bear pits. And I'm like, okay, what if they're like crimes against nature and like conservation? Like that's totally up my alley. I'm so against that. It's something that really bothers me that I follow in the news. That's it. Like that's not my emotional connection. And when I started researching about the bears and the bear pits and like the treatment of bears, I started coming across real articles about the bear trafficking and how Asia does, seek like gallbladders and, bile, and they use those for medicinal value. And like the cost, I mean, so everything in there about bear trafficking and going to Asia and the cost of a gallbladder and the cost of a paw, like that's all true. That is all real research that I did. I mean, a gallbladder is like $20,000. So you take a bear, hunk out a gallbladder and send it overseas and you got 20 grand. And it's a bad market. And, you know, I mean, is it up there with climate change? Probably not. But I mean, for me in that area, it was the one thing that I could pull in conservation-wise and still kind of pull in the bear pit. And so I was like, okay, so what if she comes across a poacher camp? And then I totally just backed it up from there and went back to the beginning. It was like, okay, now it's a poacher camp. I didn't have to rewrite everything, but I just had to retype over every single thing I did. And every time there was a clue, I had to think of a different one. So that's when but the boot prints were already in there. The bullet casings were already in there. They were just AK-47s. So I had to change the gun, like research other guns. So I am probably on the FBI's like most wanted list right now because from the whole terrorist like research and then the whole poacher and like bear trafficking research. And now I'm writing a book about a girl hacker, so now it's all about hacking research. I'm pretty much sure I'm profiled.
But you can outrun them, so it's okay.
That's why I run like
You
that. I'm thinking
so be able to
much
outrun them.
So, I mean, that gives you some example of how a story can change, why this book took me 3 years. Now, I don't do it until, that's why I outline. Because I feel like it gives me something to focus in on. And now I kind of run stories by people where they're like, okay, you can't do a jihad terrorist like this. Like, that would be a good adult book, though, I think.
Yeah. Will you tell us a little bit about the second one? Maybe give them
Yeah.
a little preview because I think they're very interested in
I
that.
can't say too much because, okay, so the second one, let me think about what I can say without spoiling it. The second one, Grace has not been in the woods for a while, obviously. Wynn is not speaking to her. It opens up with she's in class and Agent Sweeney comes in with a conservation project that he is looking for volunteers for during the winter break. The conservation project is on the red wolves, and the red wolves in North Carolina they're not, I'm going to say, I don't want to say extinct because there's about 200 in captivity, but I'm going to say pretty much extinct. So they have 200 in captivity at the Wolf Conservation Center, and they have been trying to re-release them in the wild, and for some reason, and there's many different reasons, whether it's people mistaking them for coyotes, getting run over, losing their collar, for some reason they are not able to reintroduce them into the wild, and they keep pulling them back out. So I wanted to find out why would that be? Like, that's sad to me that they're right in North Carolina, we have red wolves that no one really knows about, and they're almost gone. And there was only about 12 left in like 1970, and they pulled them all out. That's the only place that they're located is in North Carolina. They pulled them out and created a center for them, and they've been, you know, breeding and getting those back up to speed. So she volunteers against her mother's wishes. And a new character is introduced, Birdie, which is her grandmother, who is an avid bird watcher. And it is her father's mother. So that kind of brings in, you know, so Birdie comes to stay with them for a while. And she goes on this conservation project. And so she raises her hand in class, and they say, we need a couple more volunteers. And then Wynn raises his hand in class. And then Skylar raises her hand in class, and they get put together. So there's two teams, and Skylar and Grace and Wynn are one. And then there's three other characters in the other one, right? Because I need a conflict, and that's like perfect. So and Skylar, like I think it says on here, like her idea of, you know, the wilderness is like growing silk plants. So like she wears like fuzzy white, and she runs like this too. She wears like, I'm going to tie my hands like that. She wears like fuzzy, you know, white coats with like pink boots and stuff like into the woods. So you can only imagine like how humorous that is for Grace. So they go out there and they end up finding a wolf that is dead, but they can't figure out why, and that is kind of what leads her on. So she's on this conservation project with Agent Sweeney, and they're trying to figure out why, when they're reintroducing these wolves, why they're showing up dead.
Does Mo come back?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you want him to come back?
Yes.
I don't know.
He has to come back, ladies. He has to.
It's British.
The British people always survive. So, and you want me to tell you what the third book's about?
Yeah.
This is third book.
Yeah.
When is it coming out?
The third book, I think it's scheduled for spring 2013. And it is, see, I don't want to say too much because then I'll give away. All I'll say is Grace leaves North Carolina and she goes to the Everglades. Birdie is from the Everglades, and she starts looking into, I think the conservation piece obviously of book 2 is red wolves and the extinction of red wolves and what is happening to the red wolves. And the conservation point for book 3 is roadside zoos. So in Florida, basically, the roadside zoos are not governed, so there are no laws or, I guess, rules that roadside zoos have to follow. And so basically you can walk into a roadside zoo and say, I'd like to buy a white tiger, and they'll probably give you one for free. So I watched a whole expose on it. It was amazing. It was on like the Nature Channel. And there was this undercover group that went in, and this guy had like 8 white Bengal tigers, and he was like, I'd like to buy a white tiger. They're like, you can just have one for free because we have 8, and like I really don't need 8, but I can't get rid of them. Like, where am I going to send them? And the guy took home like a white Bengal tiger, and nothing happens. Like, you don't need a license. And so that is kind of the conservation point, is there are roadside zoos in Florida with lions, tigers, elephants. I mean, it's bizarre. So that's all I can say about that one, though. But all I can say is the Everglades could be a scary place. And there's 4 different terrains in the Everglades. So there's swamps, but there's also, wooded trees. There's also open fields, and there's the marshes. So there's a lot of different environments that I think Grace is going to come up.
Did your husband help you with some of the research on that?
No, he didn't know anything about Everglades. He helped in that. But I'm from Florida, so I have been to the Everglades, so I'm pretty familiar. So this one I'm going to do on my own. But as far as, there's definitely a love triangle a little bit with, Wynn and Grace and Skylar to a certain extent. So Agent Sweeney's back. Yay! You're like, who cares about Agent Sweeney? Poor Agent Sweeney. Give him some love.
Do y'all have any other questions about the book, or just questions for her as an author?
What about the Native American aspect? Like, that was really important to that area. Did you guys know anything about the Native American aspect? Did you feel like the book, I mean, you can say yes or no, did you feel like the book was preachy on conservation or the Native American history or anything along those lines? I mean, did you feel, did you walk away with the understanding of the conservation piece of the book? Okay. Because they just, a new edition was released. Is this the new edition? No. So a new edition was released that has an author letter in it. And it talks all about the bears, where you can go to find information on the bear plight. I have a petition to close the bear pits that I'm trying to get people to sign. And Bob Barker, the guy from Price is Right. You guys know Bob Barker, right? Okay, good. I'm not that old. You don't know Bob Barker from The Price is Right? Oh my God, I am.
They know Drew Carey.
Yeah, they know Drew Carey probably. We grew up watching The Price is Right.
So Bob Barker was the original Price is Right, and he's like 87 now. And I don't know if you've heard of Whale Wars on TV, where, okay, so they named the Bob Barker ship after Bob Barker because he funds the Whale Wars. So he's a huge conservationist. Yeah. And he goes every year to this Native American reservation and meets with the chief to try and close these 3 bear pits that are on this reservation. But they are outside laws, so they don't have to close them, basically. So I'm sure that, Chief might not like how he's depicted in the book. Because I did see the Chief when I was in, and I was just like, but it surprised me because it was against everything that I knew, or the stereotype, I guess.
I felt that way too, like, what?
Of Native Americans.
They're doing this?
And there is a huge, that is one of the only working reservations. I think there are some out west, But as far as Eastern, that's the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. It's the only working reservation that is, you know, on the east side of the United States. Out in Arizona and, you know, those places there are other working reservations, but that's the only one that's here. So everyone in that area, which I really like, you know, the model that was picked for the cover, because I think that, to me, that's what Grace would have looked like. Because I think she has a slight Native American kind of feel to her. And I think everyone from that area, when you go up there, has the Native American, you know, background, culture.
How did you think of 52 survival tips, survival skills?
I know, and so, because, like, you know, I just wanted my chapters to start with something different.
I liked that.
And so I started that, and then some of them seem basic, but like some of them I didn't know, you know, like, I don't know. And so what I tried to do, you know, to fend off a predator, always target the most sensitive spot. Well, duh. I mean, like, you're going to go for the nose, right? Except for with the alligator, you got to punch him in the throat. You got to wait till their mouth is open and punch them in the throat. Because they can drown. That's how they drown. Because they have a flap in the back that protects their lungs from water. Then you dunk them. No problem, right?
Then you run.
Yeah.
I started out reading the survival tips, and then it was just like I got into the story, and then I kind of skipped them. Did you guys do that?
You did? Because what I did is, my husband does that. When he always does, like, you know, we're out in the woods, he'll say something like, you know, I'll be like, what do you have, a knife? Like, he'll pull out this big old knife. I'm like, oh my gosh, holy knife. And he's like, a good knife, you know, is an essential tool to it. Okay, I get it, you know. You like those kind of things. So, and he laughs at me because, and I don't have it in this purse, but I carry a pocket knife, but it's pink. So it's like a pink pocket knife, which is just what Grace carries. And so sometimes we'll be out, and he'll be like, do you have any scissors or something? I'm like, no, but I have a good knife, because a good knife is a good resource tool. Though I have gone through the airport with it before and did not get caught.
Ooh.
And I kind of thought about going to the media, because I thought I could just be like, I went to the airport and like took my, you know, like kind of plugged my book, but yeah. So that's where the tips came from, is he's always throwing out these little tips, and some of them are obvious, so I'm like, you know, like, but then he says something like, don't, you know, if you see a bear, don't run. I'm so running. I don't know. I mean, and I'm going to run the way I always run. They're not going to catch me. So.
Well, your book must be doing well if it's on its second, would you say it's second print?
Yeah, I think it's on the second or third print, but I don't.
Do you get like emails from your publisher, like how many you've sold or that kind of stuff?
I mean, you get, like, I think all authors pretty much get royalty statements. Some of them are, you know, you don't know every day like what you've sold. No, you just kind of guess and kind of hope. I mean, sometimes you can tell by your rankings on Amazon slightly if the book has gone up, but I mean, you don't know how many sales that translates into, because there's just so many things that go into BookScan. So I try not to focus on that. I mean, I try not to read my reviews, though I did just get my first one, but that's okay.
Who sends you a review?
No, I mean just on Amazon. Like,
okay,
yeah, or Goodreads, or, you know, I try not to do that. I mean, but I went into it knowing it's kind of like me as a friend. Like, not everybody's going to like me. They're not all going to get me. So the people who do, I'll hang out with, and people who don't. So when I got the one, and it was funny because another reader started defending the book, and I'm like, oh my God, I wonder if they think that's me. Like, they probably think I'm out there under a false name, like defending my book, you know. But and this person was like attacking this. You should go out there and look at it. It's fun. This person is like attacking this other person, and they're like, what are you, 14? And she's like, yeah, I am 14. I'm like, ooh. Like, totally, like, it was obviously like this adult that was like being really nasty, and then like this little 14-year-old girl was like, I love this book, you know. And so after that, like, nothing happened. Like, there were no more comments after that. I was like,
if anybody has one more question, now's the time. Anybody have another question?
Do you have a fourth book coming up, or are you still writing it?
For this series? Mm-hmm. You know, this didn't start out as a series. It started out just as one book, but like James Patterson, and, you know, I do love his writing style, though some of his newer books are kind of sellouts, but he always leaves a thread. So he wraps up the story and then leaves a thread. So I did that in this book because I just wanted it to be open-ended. I don't want to be backed into a corner. I do have an idea for a fourth book, but I'm not quite sure. I can't see it in my mind yet. So I don't know. But that's why they didn't call it. That's why we didn't call it a trilogy. or anything like that. It's just a series. So I think if there are situations that come up that spark something, I can kind of see, I kind of have this vision of Grace scuba diving and doing something with whales or, loggerhead turtles or, or dolphins. I was on a dolphin project several years ago where we went out on a boat off of the coast of Georgia and tracked dolphins by their fins because their fins are like our fingerprints. So I see something like that, but I don't know what it's going to be.
Does the relationship between the mom and Grace get better in the second book? Or
Her mom is not in the second book. Her mom goes off to a training class to learn about, she wants to work with Dr. Head as his medical assistant, filing his insurance and stuff. So that's why Birdie comes in. So Birdie comes in to stay with Grace, and her mom goes to a couple of week training course that she doesn't want to go to now that Grace is, signed up for this project. But Birdie is like, go.
So it's kind of like she gets a piece of her father, a little bit connection to him.
Right. And Birdie is hysterical. So you can kind of see where her father came from. So I think you kind of get that connection back to him.
All right, well, we're going to give her a little break before her next session, but what do we say? That
Thanks,
was
guys.
wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for reading it.
And I think you guys need to go back to your 5th period.
Do you guys want a bookmark?